Welcome, and greetings to all. I am Shen Long Pen Dragon, the Lore Master. So as always, a quick disclaimer, I don't own any of the images or the story in this video. The credit for these all belong to their original sources. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second video of the Ancient Persia series. Today, as you can see from the title, I will be doing the Legend of Sinbad. I will warn you now, this is likely going to be quite a long video because Sinbad's tale is arguably one of the longest in the 1001 Arabian Nights, so please do bear with it. Just to give you a little warning, you may hear a lot of background noise this time. That's because my microphone and headphones are connected to the same setup, and sadly the connector jack from my laptop has gone and died on me, so I'm having to speak aloud to the computer using its inbuilt mic. So if there's any sort of background noise or poor quality sound, I do apologise. So, who was Sinbad? According to the story, he is obviously a fictional character. The legend states that he was a notorious sailor who made his fortune out of 7 different voyages. If you wish to learn more about Sinbad or from outside of this video, then do feel free. There are at least 3 if not 4 different live action movies about Sinbad's story. There is several animated movies and a few TV shows, as well as a good number of books. He also features in the popular anime Magi, which I haven't seen. The First Voyage. Our story begins in Baghdad, where a poor porter meets a rich sailor. The poor porter recognizes the sailor and exclaims, "You are the legendary sailor, Sinbad. Coincidentally, my name is also Sinbad." Interested, Sinbad the sailor lifts an eyebrow. "Is that so? Well then, poor porter, allow me to tell you my tale. Keep returning each day to hear one more of my stories, and I will reward you with 100 gold coins per day." As a young man, Sinbad the sailor had inherited a large fortune from his late father. However, like many young men, he squandered his wealth and soon was broke. In an attempt to rebuild his fortune, Sinbad set out on a voyage, taking everything that he could they thought might sell. The crew eventually find a giant island with many trees growing upon it. They dock at the beach and start to make camp for the night, only to find out that this is no island at all, but is in fact a giant whale. The fires that the crew start awaken the beast, and it dives for the depths. Luckily enough, the ship and most of the crew survive. However, Sinbad is left behind. He is eventually washed onto a different island covered by dense forests. Lonely and alone, he wanders among the trees, searching for something to eat. After a time, Sinbad finds a horse and a groom struggling with each other. The horse bolts from the young man and ends up stuck in a bog or a lake. From the watery depths rises a water horse demon that attempts to drown the mare. Drawing his sword, Sinbad leaps to intervene, saving the poor beast and pulling it from the watery grave. Impressed by his bravery, the young groom takes Sinbad to meet his king, who then employs him. Sinbad makes good money working for the king, and eventually finds out that the ship he had first sailed on has returned to port. Sinbad manages to reclaim his goods and trades them with the king in return for riches. Having made a huge profit by selling the wealth that the king gives him, he decides to return home to Baghdad. The second voyage. Growing bored of his life of luxury, Sinbad once again sets out upon the seven seas. This time, he ends up stranded on an island with a rock nest. The rock is a giant, eagle-like bird, easily capable of swooping down from the skies and snatching up elephants in a single talon. Tricking the giant bird, Sinbad manages to travel across the landscape, gaining a better view and understanding of where he has ended up. The giant bird eventually ends up traveling to the Valley of Giant Snakes, where it feasts upon the inhabitants there. While the giant bird and giant snakes battle it out, Sinbad takes the opportunity to examine his surroundings. There, he discovers that the giant snakes are actually guarding hoards of diamonds and other gems. Taking the opportunity, Sinbad steals the gems, and then, using chunks of meat, tricks the rock into carrying him back to its nest. There, Sinbad awaits, and is rescued by passing merchants who often use similar tricks in order to steal the gems from the snakes. Bartering a passage, Sinbad once again makes his way home. The third voyage. Feeling the thrill of adventure once again, Sinbad puts together a crew and a ship and begins his third adventure. This time, Sinbad ends up on an island ruled by giants. One of the monstrous creatures captures the crew and imprisons them. Starting with the ship's captain, began to eat them, roasting them over a fire on an iron spit. Sinbad, fearing for his own safety and that of the crew, steals the spit and with the help of the others manages to blind the creature. The crew construct a raft and manage to escape the island, but not before the enraged mate of the giant begins to throw rocks at them, killing the majority of the crew. Later, through many adventures, Sinbad and his remaining crew encounter a giant python. Again, by a stroke of luck, they manage to escape and earn themselves even more riches. The fourth voyage. Once again, yearning for the call of adventure, Sinbad leaves home. This time, Sinbad and his crew are captured on a desolate island by naked savages. The Persians are completely shocked by their behavior, for they've never seen men and women wandering around naked before. Despite being captives, they are not ill-treated. They are even fed with herbs. Sensing a trap, Sinbad refused to eat the herb, only to be proven his suspicions correct. The rest of the crew soon go mad, and the savages are revealed to be cannibals. Losing interest in Sinbad as he is not eating the herb, their attention turns to the rest of the crew. Taking the opportunity, Sinbad manages to escape. He travels for a time and eventually finds himself befriending a king. This king, impressed by Sinbad's tale and bravery, gifts him with a beautiful and wealthy wife. Sadly, not long after their marriage, Sinbad's wife falls ill and dies. As is the custom of this land, the two of them are locked together in a joint tomb with very few rations. Despairing over his predicament and the death of his wife, Sinbad can only eat his rations and drink what water he has and await for death. Yet, it was not his time to die. For, when his rations seemed almost but gone, another couple were locked in the tomb. As with his wife, one dead, one alive. Unwilling to die, Sinbad kills the surviving woman, taking her rations and water. This continues on for an unknown period of time, for Sinbad had no idea how long he was locked in the tomb, killing survivors and taking both their rations and water and any valuable items he could find, for the dead did not need them, yet he might. Almost driven to the point of madness by his long entombment, Sinbad eventually manages to store himself a large supply of water and food, but he has no way to escaping. Eventually, a wild animal seems to have found its way into the tomb. Sinbad follows the beast and eventually manages to find his way out to the high seas. There, he waits, where a passing ship finds him. Sinbad manages to barter away home, and eventually returns home to Baghdad. The fifth voyage. After spending many months at home, Sinbad eventually learns to forget all the perils and horror of his last voyage. This time, the adventure junkie assembles his own crew rather than relying on friends and those of other captains. They set out on a journey and find an island with a huge egg upon it. Sinbad recognizes the egg as a rock egg. The crew, who have never seen such a thing before, decide that they wish to disembark the boat in order to get a better look. Seeing no harm in it, Sinbad allows his crew to leave the ship. However, the foolish men are hungry from their long period at sea and end up breaking open the egg, eating the chick inside. Fearing the wrath of the giant birds, Sinbad orders everyone to get back on the boat so that they can flee, but not before the rocks find out what has been done to their baby. Enraged, the birds chase the ship, dropping rocks upon it, smashing the wood and splintering it to pieces. Unable to withstand the bombardment, the ship is destroyed, and Sinbad once again finds himself shipwrecked. His luck takes a turn for the worst when Sinbad finds himself enslaved by the Old Man of the Sea. The old man wraps his legs around Sinbad and makes him carry him on his back night and day. Sinbad, tired, hungry, and depressed at the death of his crew, can only long for death, having now been enslaved by this mad crook that continuously rode on his back. Eventually, Sinbad decides to make wine and manages to get the old man drunk. The Old Man of the Sea falls off of Sinbad's back, Turning on his enslaver, Sinbad kills him without regret or mercy. Travelling until he finds a new city, Sinbad hopes to regain his fortune, only to find that the city is plagued by man-eating apes. Yet, by some miracle, he overcomes these apes and rebuilds his fortune before returning home to Baghdad. The sixth voyage. The restless hero once again feels the need to set out on adventure, and so he begins a new journey. Once more plagued by rotten luck, Sinbad's ship is smashed to pieces upon tall cliffs. Stranded, the crew begin to die of starvation, while there is not enough food to go around. Determined not to die, and once again on his own, Sinbad builds a raft from the splintered pieces of wood that had once been his ship. Gathering what resources he could, he sets out again. When he comes to the cliffs that destroyed his ship, he finds that there is a stream leading under them. Rather than braving the open sea, he takes the stream. Under the cliffs, he finds that there is untold wealth and riches glittering in the water below him. The stream is full of gems, rubies, diamonds, sapphires, emeralds, and many more that he could not identify. After gathering what he could, Sinbad fell asleep upon his little craft. Sinbad awakes to find himself in a city where he meets the king of Serendib, or Ceylon, in modern-day Sri Lanka. Intrigued by Sinbad's story, the king bids him to return to Baghdad, carrying a ruby cup, a bed made of the skin of an elephant-eating snake, 100,000 miskals of Shinda Ling Alusa, and a slave girl. Upon his return, Sinbad recounts his tale to the scribes of the city, who eagerly record his endeavours. The seventh and final voyage of Sinbad. Beginning to get on in years, Sinbad decides it's time for one final adventure. Sinbad's final adventure once again begins with misfortune, for he ends up stranded on a desolate shore with nothing but a name. Out of sheer stubbornness, he once again builds himself a raft to continue his adventure. Sinbad eventually ends up in yet a new city, where he befriends the chief of merchants. The kindly man quickly takes a shine to Sinbad, and before long, Sinbad marries his only daughter. Having pleased with everything he'd done with his life, the merchant sadly died, leaving everything to the newlyweds. Sinbad is content to stay in the city and live out his days with his new wife. But fate had another thing in store. Once a month, the inhabitants of this city transformed into birds. The birdmen took Sinbad on a journey with them into the sky, where they hear the so-called voices of angels praising their God. Yet, no sooner had the angels finished their ceremony than when fire rained down from the heavens, all but killing the birdmen. Angry and blaming Sinbad, they abandoned him atop a mountain. There, Sinbad met two youths, who claimed to be the servants of God. They gave him a golden staff and wished him luck on his journey back to his wife. Upon returning to his wife, Sinbad learns from her that the birdmen are in fact demons, and that she and her father were some of the only people in the city not afflicted by this curse. The two of them hatch a plan. They sell off her father's business and everything else that they own before journeying back to Baghdad. Upon their return, Sinbad is content to live out his days with his wife, not seeking any new adventures and living an honest man. Impressed with the story, the poor porter had continued coming back to Sinbad once a day to hear every single one of his voyages. Sinbad the sailor pays Sinbad the porter one last time. I hope you learned something from my tale, young man. Go and make something of your life. Do not settle simply for being second best, and for simply living off the streets, being kept under the thumb of those who believe themselves your betters. You are young. Go out there and earn your fortune as I did. And remember, spend it well. 700 gold coins richer, and with a light heart, Sinbad the porter sets off to begin his own adventure. And thus ends the legend of Sinbad. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please remember to like and subscribe for more lore, myths, legends, and stories. I am Shenlong Pen Dragon, and until next time, remember, knowledge is power.